Alright, so I've brought in this drawing from the first anatomy tutorial. You probably recognize it. And I wanted to have this as a comparison, as well as just a reminder of the different shapes, because we are going to be using the same shapes and the same proportions to some degree. We're just going to be altering some parts to make it either more masculine or more feminine. Now, even as a guide to keep it the same as the first one, I'm going to add these lines just as a bit of a guide. You don't have to do this, just to make things a little bit easier to understand. Now, something that I would say is a big difference is the torso. And as you can see in this one, it's just these two shapes. And if you were to draw a line just straight down, it would be the top and the bottom is the same, and then it just dips inwards a little bit. Of course, not all bodies have this shape, but just as a starting point. Now, if you want to make the body a little bit more masculine, like for a male character, then you're going to want to make it, instead of rectangular, it's going to be more of an upside down triangle. So this part is going to be wider, and then it's going to go down, and it will get smaller over at the waist. So smaller waist, larger shoulders. And now with a female body, now of course this isn't always going to be the case, but one way is the hourglass figure. Or even if you wanted to, you could do an upright triangle. So the hourglass is similar to where we started, except it's a bit more exaggerated, where it goes inwards and then outwards, but it still remains the same. Or you could have like smaller shoulder blades and then even wider hips, so it goes out this way. Now I will put this into action, drawing the actual bases for the male and female bodies. So here is the male. Now I might exaggerate these a little bit. Of course, they don't have to be like super extreme. And let's not forget to draw the line of symmetry. Since it's head on, both sides should be around the same. And then for female, is going to be like this. Next, I will add the head, and the head, there are going to be some slight differences. So for the male, I will draw a bit more of a sharper jawline. I'm gonna make this just a little bit smaller. And I will draw a larger neck. And a bit of triangles going this way. Whereas for the female, I will draw a bit of a softer jaw. And a bit of a smaller neck. And less prominent, like smoother triangles going from the neck to attach to the shoulders. Now both are going to add the shoulder blades for the shoulders. The female one, I'm going to make them a bit smaller, whereas the male will be a larger one. There'll be a bit more muscles to the arms. And we are sticking with the same underwear shape, pretty much. For the male one, I'll add like a bit more of a bulge there, whereas the female one is going to be flat. Do we need to add lots of details to this area? No, because we're not drawing these characters naked. If you are, you should look for a different tutorial to show you more details on that. And for the legs, now this, like, of course is optional. All of these things are optional, they're just different little ideas. Is for the male, I would draw the legs kind of spread out a little bit more. In more of like a confident stance, whereas with the woman's eye, they would be a bit closer together. And for attaching, like drawing the actual legs, for the male, I'm gonna do more straight lines. And then just like sharper edges. So even this part where I draw here, like I'll go out a bit, but it's still basically just straight lines. I noticed this one is a bit longer. We want to make sure both of the joints are on the same plane. So I'm just going to adjust that. And for the female legs, I am adding more curves and softer lines to them. While still having some straight lines, because we don't want like it to be too bumpy like that. You want like a mix of straight and more curvy lines. End up like that. And something that if your body does look a bit off with how like you've done the proportions correctly, but just there's something seems off, make sure that the joints are a decent size. Like if it seems like it's a bit too thin, like for their knees, you can maybe make the joints a little bit larger. Now, the smoothness could also go for the torso as well. Like I will draw just more curved lines, whereas for the male, they're just a bit more straight lines. For the arms, I'm just gonna draw another guideline here, because the arms are gonna be the same length for whichever body. The joints here. I'm not gonna go too in-depth on muscles and fat in this video because that is something I'm gonna touch on in the next video. However, oftentimes if you're trying to add a bit more of a masculine trait, you could add a bit more muscles to the arms and like the biceps. So I will add just a bit, like you don't want it to look too bubbly, but like maybe have one side have more of the muscles and the other side is just a little bit straighter. Like this. It's another reason why I made the arms a bit bigger, so we were able to do this step. Whereas this part of the arms, they could still stay how they are. They don't need to have a whole lot of prominent muscles. And then the hands, I'm not gonna focus on the hands. I've already done a video on how to draw hands, so I just drew them very simply, just to show kind of where they would stop. And then with the feminine one, I'm not really adding muscles, unless that goes with your character design. Like, of course you can add muscles with female character. It won't make them less of a female character, but just for like the purposes of showing differences, I'm going to make her have like a bit thinner arms. Then the hands for this tutorial are going to be the same. But again, if I were going to show more detailed hands, I would draw the male hands as just a little bit thicker and less curves, whereas the female one would just be a bit more like slender. And now for the feet, I would probably draw like the male feet a bit larger than the female ones. I would do a little bit smaller. Another thing that I didn't show in this video, because I wanted to make sure we were still remembering the proportion wise, is oftentimes guys are like going to be taller than the women, so that's something else that you might want to do. I'm just keeping these all like the same, but realistically, like if I had these two people next to each other, it would be a lot more likely that they would end up looking more like, okay, that's a bit of a big difference, but it would end up looking more like this. But for the sake of showing, you know, the proportions, I'm gonna have them like that. Lastly, for the female body part, is we are going to be adding the breasts as well. And obviously they come in all different shapes and sizes. I'm just gonna kind of do like an average one. So you don't just want to draw just circles. You want to draw more like teardrop shapes. I believe I talked about this in another video, but we're going over it again. Or kind of like sandbags or something that's like coming from around her neck and going down. And they're really like fluid as well, so we're just gonna do that. And keep in mind, like, it depends on what the character is wearing. Like, if she was wearing a bra or something, then they would be pushed, like, together. Otherwise, they're just gonna be hanging down, and there will be a bit more of a gap between them. And then once it's been down, I did this on another layer just so I would be able to show you the process and then erasing the part that we don't need anymore. Because they don't actually go up this high, that's just to get an idea of the shape. And there we go. But you notice, even before I added this part, you could still tell a bit of a difference between the female and the male body. Alright, now that we have got the main anatomy body part done, I am also going to show just a closer up version of the face and the head, because that is also another like helpful way to kind of have a difference between the male and female body. Alright, now for both heads, we are going to start with a circle, so I'm going to add 2 circles here. Now the top one will be male, and the bottom one will be female. And most people will make like the main difference as they will just add eyelashes to the female, maybe some facial hair to the male, and just make that the difference. But there are a lot of like smaller subtle things that you can do to add more of a difference as well. So you don't even need to add eyelashes to the female character to make her look like a female character. Now for one, like I mentioned before, is the male is always more angular, which is the same as the body and the head. Now of course the amount of this depends on your style. Like I've got a bit more of like an anime type style head, even when I'm like not necessarily trying to. That's just kind of how my style is. And the female is going to be more rounded. And something else, this is also is I will change this based off the age of my character as well. But typically I will make the woman's face just a bit more compacted, like that. Now, if you're wanting more in-depth tutorial on the proportions of the head, you can watch my tutorial that I have made on how to draw heads. Now, for the eyes, for the male character, again, it's more angular, or more straight lines, I guess you could say. Now, there are so many different ways to draw eyes, and even myself, I draw them a lot of different ways depending on the character and the personality that they have. So this is just one of like so many different ways that you could draw the eyes. But with the male, it's more straight lines, whereas with the female, I'm going to draw more curved lines. And remember, this isn't always the case. Like in a lot of things, the guys can have round eyes like this as well. Women will have eyes more angular like that. I've drawn both ways. Now, the younger your character is, the larger the eyes will be and the rounder they will be. So, for example, if I'm drawing like a kid that's a boy, like he will have rounder eyes and like larger eyes as well. Or just if you want the character to come across as just more innocent, then they can have the rounder eyes as well. But if you're trying to make a character like overly masculine, then I would draw the more angular eyes. Just make them look a little bit more tough, I guess. And then you can see me cheating and just copying the same eye, because why not? You're an artist, you have the ability to do that. It's not cheating, it's fine. And then other thing with the male is I'll often draw like a longer nose and like larger or more prominent nose, whereas with the female character I will draw like a bit less of that detail. And then the mouth can pretty much be the same. Like the woman's might be just like a little bit smaller, but otherwise that's the same. And then with the male, I will draw thicker eyebrows. This is one I almost always do. Like, I rarely ever draw my female characters with like thicker eyebrows like that, whereas I will do that with the guys. And ears, I would say, are pretty much always the same. Like, how are you gonna really make ears masculine or feminine unless you're adding like earrings or jewelry? But that also isn't really very gendered. Like, I draw guys with earrings. I think they're cool. Anyways. Now, this one here, although it is more feminine than the top one, it is also very gender neutral as well. Like the top one, it stands out more as male, whereas the female one, it could just be like a younger guy as well. And I'm gonna make the eyes just a little bit smaller just because I'm trying to make the ages the same. And that's normally kind of how I would draw like a younger character. The older characters, I draw the eyes a bit more oval and less of a like large anime eye. And now, of course, you can, like, if you want to add lipstick or lips, you can add that. The character, it's not super necessary. Eyelashes, I always like to draw eyelashes. I will always draw extremely exaggerated, like, huge eyelashes a lot of the time on my characters, just because I like how that looks. It's not necessary, but you can. Yep, the nose a little bit. And again, the neck. And something else I will add with the male one and not so much the female one is this shape here on the neck. Do I know what it's called anatomically, like professionally? No. But you know, that kind of shape. Whereas the female one, I won't really do that as much. And then of course you can add the hair to your characters and all that other stuff, but there we go.
Alright, thank you so much for watching. I hope to make 2 more anatomy tutorials sometime in the future, as well as some other art tutorials, so if you're interested in seeing those, feel free to like and subscribe, as well as comment your thoughts, and if you have any additional tips for beginner artists. Also, I have a Ko-fi if you're looking for another way to support me further. Thank you so much for watching, and happy drawing. Have an amazing day. Bye!